In the grand tapestry of human history, there exists a figure whose mere mention evokes a myriad of emotions, stirring the depths of curiosity and controversy. His name echoes through the ages like a beacon, guiding us through the tumultuous seas of time. Christopher Columbus, a name that resonates with both admiration and admonition, depending on which shore of history one stands. Imagine, if you will, the winds of the late 15th century, whispering secrets of distant land and uncharted waters. It was in this era of daring dreams and boundless ambition that Columbus, with unwavering resolve, set sail across the vast expanse of the Atlantic Ocean. His ships, like mighty titans of wood and canvas, carved through the waves, carrying with them the hopes and admiration of an entire era. But oh, how the currents of fate are fickle, and the compass of destiny seldom points in a straight line. For Columbus, hailed as a visionary by some and vilified as a conqueror by others, found himself at the nexus of history's crossroads. His expeditions, fueled by a quest for riches and a thirst for adventure, would leave an indelible mark on the world, forever altering its course. Join us now as we embark on a journey of discovery, navigating the double-edged waters, controversy, and complexity that surround Columbus's voyages. Let us unravel the tangled web of triumphs and tragedies, exploring the untold stories hidden beneath the surface of history. For in the annals of human endeavor, few figure loom as large or cast a long shadow as Christopher Columbus.
Exploration today differs greatly from 600 years ago. Christopher Columbus and other adventurers faced immense challenges without modern technology. While Columbus lacked today's tools, he meticulously documented his voyages, providing valuable insights into his geographical knowledge and navigation plans. His logs remain crucial for historians, offering a detailed picture of his explorations and the challenges he faced. In the 1480s, Christopher Columbus and his brother Bartholomew planned to reach Asia by sailing west across the Atlantic Ocean, inspired by a map from Paolo del Pozzo Toscanelli. Despite the belief in a spherical Earth, navigation still relied on stars and understanding the Earth's curvature at the time. Let's take a look at the elements of key importance in Columbus' navigation. First up is the diameter of Earth and the travel distance estimates he made. In the 2nd century BC, Eratosthenes measured Earth's diameter accurately using an astrolabe. However, Columbus mistakenly believed in a smaller Earth based on flawed calculations by Marinus of Tyre and misinterpreted estimates by Alfraganus. Despite more accurate assessment by scholars following Ptolemy, Columbus remained convinced that Asia was a short journey westward across the Atlantic. Understanding trade winds was crucial for Columbus' voyages. He planned to use the northeast trade wind to navigate westward from the Canary Islands, aiming to catch the westerlies in the North Atlantic for the return journey. This knowledge, known as volta do mar by the Portuguese, required skillful sailing techniques, including beating against the wind during parts of the return to Spain. Despite his developing grasp of these winds and the risks of hurricane season in harsh latitudes, Columbus managed to avoid major obstacles on his westward journey. For his westward voyage in search of a shorter route to the Orient, Columbus set sail with 3 ships, the Santa Maria, commanded by Juan de la Cosa and under Columbus' leadership, and 2 other smaller caravels, the Pinta and the Nina, piloted by the Pinzan brothers. Departing from Palos de la Frontera on August 3, 1492, Columbus and his crew sailed down the Rio Tinto and into the Atlantic. Columbus relied heavily on celestial navigation techniques using stars, the moon, and the sun to determine direction and position. Crucial tools like the quadrant helped locate the ships based on heavenly bodies. In the absence of internet, he sought navigation insights from old ship logs and sailor tales. Basic instruments such as the compass and hourglass aided in direction and timekeeping. Lacking modern communication, Columbus depended on prior voyage accounts and oral traditions. With rudimentary math and science, he calculated distances and positions following navigational steps learned from predecessors. Columbus' navigation methods remain debated, with some suggesting upon his routes by chance, while others argue for a deliberate approach. Departing from the Canary Islands, he likely aimed westward along the 28th parallel based on contemporary maps. Despite challenges from his crew and the limitations of his era's instrument, Columbus remained resolute, deviating only when necessary due to adverse winds or potential land sightings. Bishop Las Casas summarized his lost journal, revealing inaccuracies and clerical errors. Flawed understanding of Earth's size and the primitive nautical instruments posed obstacles. While he made notable observations, his navigation was imprecise, with his landfall in the Americas attributed more to serendipity than calculation. Despite criticism, Columbus's expedition reflects human curiosity and exploration, marking a significant geographical discovery.
Let us now talk about the geopolitical dynamics in the pre-voyage period. The Reconquista culminated in 1492 with the fall of Granada, fueling the Spanish zeal for expansion and exploration. Embedded in broader conflict between the Christian Europe and the Moorish territories through reconquest of Al-Andalus, this particular event gave rise to the religious fervor intertwined with territorial ambitions, laying the groundwork for the voyages of Columbus, as evident through this excerpt from Voyage 1. Your Highnesses, as Catholic Christians and princesses who love the holy Christian faith and the propagation of it, and who are enemies to the sect of Mahoma and to all idolatries and heresies, resolve to send me, Cristobal Colon, to the said parts of India to see the said princes and the cities and lands, and their disposition, with a view that they might be converted. Henceforth, Columbus viewed voyages as divine mission to spread Christianity, as evident in his letters. Furthermore, this was backed by the royal authority of the Spanish monarchs Ferdinand and Isabella I in the post-Reconquista period. Talking about the major political developments in the medieval Europe, the fall of Constantinople in 1453 marked the end of Byzantine rule and the conquest of city by the Ottoman Turks under Sultan Mehmed II. This event had far-reaching consequences, disrupting European access to the Eastern Mediterranean and lucrative Silk Road trade routes that connected Europe with Asia. One significant consequence of these developments was the urgency among European powers to find alternatives to Asia. Henceforth, this quest for alternative routes ultimately fueled the age of European exploration and voyages of discovery, as nations like Portugal and Spain sought to bypass Ottoman-controlled territories and establish direct trade connections with Asia in the search of India, China, and Japan, along with the Spice Islands. Talking about the immediate neighbors, during the age of exploration, monarchical rivalry between Spain and Portugal was a driving force behind the maritime endeavors of emerging European nations, competing for territory, influence, and access to lucrative trade routes. This ambition was showcased through the issuance of capitulations of Santa Fe and the Articles of Agreement, which granted Columbus significant privileges and authority. This period of intense competition between Spain and Portugal fueled a wave of exploration and colonization, as Portugal made significant advances in maritime exploration under the patronage of Prince Henry the Navigator and the subsequent discovery of the sea route to India in 1498 under Vasco da Gama. The Treaty of Alcacovas in 1479 solidified Portugal's territorial advances by recognizing its control over key trade routes and overseas territories. Talking about the geopolitical conditions in the post-voyage period, the Treaty of Tordesillas aided in neutralizing the rivalry between the Spain and Portugal, as the treaty brokered by Pope Alexander IV established a dividing line 370 leagues west of the Cape Verde Islands, formalizing the competing ambitions of Spain and Portugal in the New World, as Portugal gained rights to territories in Africa, Asia, and Brazil, while Spain received the majority of the Americas. Furthermore, talking about the emergence of Spain as a global power, historian John H. Barry suggests that Columbus's voyages opened up new territories for European powers to colonize, leading to the establishment of vast colonial empires. Unification of the Christian kingdoms, exploration and colonization, the Treaty of Tordesillas, conquest of the Aztec and the Inca empires, as well as the establishment of viceroyalties in New Spain and Peru, facilitated the expansion of the Spanish administrative control. It was further supported by the influx of precious metals, which aided Spain's military and political ambitions, as well as the expanding Spanish galleon trade. Nonetheless, the internal divisions and the decline of the Spanish Empire beginning in the early 19th century due to wars of independence weakened Spain's grip. While these unfortunate developments took place, it also triggered a domino effect. The age of exploration allowed for the expansion of the wave of European power. The successful voyages of Christopher Columbus triggered a wave of European exploration and colonization, the age of discovery and exploration. Motivated by Spain's conquest, Portugal, France, England, and the Netherlands intensified their efforts to explore further and establish colonies, such as Portuguese explorers, including Vasco da Gama, French explorers, led by Jacques Cartier, explored Canada. English expeditions, including those by John Cabot, led to the establishment of colonies in present-day North America, while the Dutch explorers, such as Henry Hudson, ventured into North America and established trading posts. These voyages laid the foundation for the establishment of vast colonial empires that reshaped world history. Last but not the least, the Columbian Exchange. The term, coined by Alfred Crosby in his work, The Columbian Exchange, refers to the transoceanic expeditions of the 15th and the 16th centuries, most notably Christopher Columbus's voyage in 1492. Talking about its global impact, the expeditions facilitated convergence of ecological regions previously separated by continental drift, profoundly impacting the regions of Americas, Europe, and Africa. This reunification reshaped the history of the world, influencing economies, cultures, and ecosystems on a global scale. The following image depicts the to and fro motion of plants, animals, and diseases across the continents, inspired by Christopher Columbus's voyage.
Let's delve into the complex dynamics between Columbus and the natives, drawing insights from the luminary historians and primary sources. As Columbus embarked on his voyages, his intentions shifted, reflecting the changing dynamics of exploration, conquest, and exploitation. Historians like David Stannard suggest that Columbus's primary intention was the pursuit of wealth through the exploitation of native peoples. His diary entries reveal a desire for gold and riches during his actions. In his own words, Columbus wrote, "Gold is the most precious of all commodities. Gold constitutes treasure, and he who possesses it has all he needs in this world." Inga offers a different perspective, arguing that Columbus saw himself as a Christian crusader, driven by a desire to spread Christianity to the New World. Columbus wrote, "It was the Lord who put into my mind to sail to the Indies. There was no question that the inspiration was from the Holy Spirit." Meanwhile, the intentions of native peoples evolved as they encountered Columbus and his crew. Initially curious and welcoming, they soon realized the threat posed by newcomers. Zvetan Todorov highlights the natives' changing attitude towards the Europeans. Initially, they viewed them with curiosity and hospitality, but as conflicts arose, their perceptions shifted. Todorov writes, "The initial encounter between Columbus and the natives was marked by curiosity and wonder, but as violence and exploitation ensued, trust turned into fear." Bartolomé de las Casas, a Spanish priest and historian, documented the brutal treatment of the native peoples by Columbus and his men. He witnessed firsthand the atrocities committed in the name of conquest and greed. Las Casas wrote, "They thought nothing of knifing Indians by tens and twenties and of cutting slices of them to test the sharpness of their blades." As we reflect on the changing intentions of Columbus and the natives, it is essential to confront the uncomfortable truths of history. And the encounter between Columbus and the native was not a peaceful exchange, but rather a clash of cultures marked by exploitation, violence, and tragedy.
As we stealthily move across the ocean blue, witnessing a contested discovery, it's time to wear the lens of religion and to know a little about the man and his mission, whose being a sinner or a saint perhaps rests upon his proximity with Christianity and Christendom. The Diario of the First Voyage, date December 26, 1492. Christopher Columbus says he wanted to find enough gold and the almost equally valuable spices in such quantity that the sovereigns will undertake and prepare to go conquer the Holy Sepulchre. For thus I urged your highnesses to spend all the profits of this enterprise on the conquest of Jerusalem. Interestingly, this statement implies that it was not the first time Columbus had mentioned the motivation for his undertakings, nor was it to be the last. In this regard, scholars like Dr. Carol Delaney and Roger A. Johnson have presented a plethora of testimonies ranging from the writings of the great historian Bartolome de las Casas to the commentaries of Diego Alvarez Chanca. In fact, the way Christopher began signing his reports and letters during and after the first voyage, using mysterious symbols, along with evidences from this collection of classical and biblical passages known as Libro de las Profecias or the Book of Prophecies, amply substantiates that Columbus not merely wanted to reclaim the land of the Bible and the place where Jesus had walked, rather his vision was of the second coming, wherein Christ would return before the end of days. Apparently, there is no dearth of arguments highlighting the religious connotations behind the Spaniard insignia support of the voyage and the entangled persona of Columbus himself as the Christ-bearer. Still, there are scholars like William D. Phillips, Jr. and Carla Ran Phillips who propose that though as early as his first voyage, Columbus had suggested that all the profits from his enterprise should be used for the Christian cause, yet he had his mind on the pragmatic matters as an adept businessman and inveterate dealmaker to be able to attract funding from both public and private sources for his voyages. Considering the arguments from both ends, it is rather pertinent to note that indubitably recent researches on the life of Columbus and his contemporaries have molded the way in which Christianity has been situated through the voyages to a point that it has influenced the minds of Americans and the manner in which they view Columbus even today. Perhaps then, the only difference between persuasive rhetoric and a persuasive scholarly argument is the readiness of the latter to present hard evidences and interpret those in a balanced way, while keeping the alley open to what more can be said on the way.
Arawakan Indians' relationship with Spaniards. The Taino were a historic indigenous subgroup of people of the Caribbean who spoke dialect of Arawakan language group. In the late 15th century, they were the principal inhabitants of most what is now Cuba, Jamaica, Haiti, Bahamas, and the northern Lesser Antilles. They made significant contribution to the Caribbean history and culture. European colonization brought diseases, forced labor, and violence, decimating the Taino. Despite this, remnants of their culture, language, and heritage endure, shaping the Caribbean identity. Arrival of Christopher Columbus in the Bahamas Island region of America has led to the alteration of American landscape forever. In his logbooks and letters, he admired the landscape of the region, but it was not just for the sake of admiring. His every move and every action was motivated with the greed of acquiring more and more resources, particularly the gold and the spices. In his logbook, he gave description of Aboriginal body physique, dietary habits, and behavior with the Spaniards. He paid importance to creating friendly relationship with these people so that they could get easily converted to Christianity and give the Spaniards whatever they possess. In the exchange of gold, they gave usual things of their use like leather tags, glass beads, hawks, and bell. He assumed that it would be very easy for these people to Christianize as they really didn't have religion of their own and they should be good servants, as Columbus observed that they soon repeat anything that is said to them. They believed that Columbus and his acquaintances had come from the sky, maybe due to their different skin tone and dressing pattern. During the course of first voyage, Columbus tried to have friendly relationship with Aboriginal when he traveled the island of San Salvador, Santa Maria, Fernandina, Isabela, and Hispaniola. In the island of Hispaniola, he took possession of a large town and named this town Villa de Navidad and built a fort there. Columbus mentioned about the warm friendship with the king of that land, who was very much empathetic and gave his best to the Columbus. Columbus was extremely confident about Arawakan Indian innocence and called them the most timorous people of the world. In fact, the men that he left there would be enough to destroy the whole land, and the island holds no danger for them as long as they maintain discipline. However, destiny had other plans for the Spaniards and Arawakan Indians. Dr. Chanca, who was a Spanish physician, accompanied Christopher Columbus on his second voyage. In his letter to the Municipal Council of native city of Seville, he gave description of Carib Islands whose inhabitants eat human flesh. According to him, the customary of these Carib people are beastly. He also mentioned the Christian behavior to the Indians. Women were brutally raped, and when they resisted, they were whipped like hell. He gave description of death of the Christians and other settlers from the first voyage. The Indians told them through an interpreter that Conavo and Marini had killed them, but complained at the same time that Christians had taken 3 or 4 women, from which led to the conclusion that they have been murdered out of jealousy. During the course of second voyage, the perception of Spaniards toward the Indians changed drastically. They saw them inferior to them and tried to use them to the best of their capabilities. According to Dr. Chanca, they all say that they wish to be Christians, although actually they were the idolaters. There were idols of all kind in their houses, and when they were asked, they answered that they belonged to Torre, that is to say, to the sky. Columbus' second expedition marked the beginning of European invasion of the Americas. Upon arrival in Isabella in early January 1494, a significant portion of Spanish crew fell ill and widespread native casualty followed. Various diseases like syphilis, malaria, yellow fever, or smallpox likely contributed to the outbreak. Columbus himself became sick on Hispaniola, leading to chaos among his troops, who resorted to violence and exploitations against the indigenous population. Natives, weakened by illness, faced demands for gold and were subjected to brutal treatment. The island populations, once around 8 million, rapidly declined due to disease, exploitations, and forced labor. Columbus implemented the repartimento system, granting control over the entire indigenous communities to Spanish masters, resulting in a widespread suffering, malnourishment, and despair among the natives. Many resorted to drastic measures such as suicide or refusing to reproduce as a means of coping with their dire circumstances.
Discovery of the hitherto unknown American continent in the year 1492 by explorer Christopher Columbus marks a watershed moment in the checkered trajectory of global history. One of the earliest and most significant impacts obviously brought about by Columbian expedition was the opening up of new trade routes. The first and second voyages of Columbus established a direct sea route between Europe and the Americas, reducing the time and the cost of trade between the two continents and allowing for exchange of goods, ideas, and technologies. The Columbian Exchange, a term originating from the work of environmental historian Alfred Crosby, definitively refers to the transfer of plants and animals that began with the encounter between Europe and the Americas in 1492. The directions of these biological transfers and the effects on the respective environments had vast impacts on indigenous populace. According to his diaries and logbook, Columbus returned to the Caribbean in 1493 on his second voyage, with 17 ships, 1,200 men, and seeds and cuttings for the planting of wheat, chickpeas, melons, onions, radishes, salad greens, grapevines, sugarcane, fruit stones, and for the founding of orchards. Other crops like sugar plantations were later brought by the Spanish. And also American produce, including tobacco, potatoes, tomato, chocolate, and gold that had a significant impact on the economy, were also introduced by Columbus to Europe. Columbus returned to Europe in the first voyage with 2 ships, a few captive Taino natives, gold, and other specimens of native produce like turkeys, pineapples, and tobacco. A third impact associated with Columbian exchange was the spread of diseases into an area without inherited immunity or a virgin soil epidemic. The introduction of European and Asian animals like pigs, sheep, chickens, cattle in the Americas to facilitate animal protein and domestic use led to a large-scale accidental transfer of diseases from Europe to America, from which the natives were least protected, due to their hitherto dearth of contact with such species like smallpox, measles, influenza, and others that wiped our population and led to disintegration of regional polities. For instance, the scale of loss might be understood from the fact that the population of Hispaniola consists of almost 8 million Arawakan Indians, which were reduced to mere 10,000 by 1520, as was the case in Cuba and central Mexico. Columbus's voyages led to the beginning of settlement and colonization of the Americas. Although the first settlement of La Navidad with 39 sailors was destroyed, the second voyage involved atrocities on the native population, involving forceful extraction of gold tributes, captive slavery, and punishments when failed to comply with Spanish demands. After criticism by the Spanish monarchy and priests like Bartolomeo de las Casas, the enslavement and forced labor of Taino population soon shifted to the transatlantic slave trade of the 1520s. Lastly, the so-called discovery of the New World also carried epochal implications for European thought. The claims of Columbus made in his extravagant letter on the first voyage goes thus: Hispaniola is a miracle, both fertile and beautiful. The harbors are unbelievably good, and there are many rivers, majority of which contain gold. The perception of the native from foolish people who had the knowledge of the value of gold to barbarians, or from savages to nature's children, became a burning issue in the royal deliberations of Europe from 1500s. America offered a screen for many on which old world fears and aspirations could be projected, as the idea of India as a savage and barbaric horde of people lacking the gift of civilization, to the embodiment of innocence and freedom, lacking sexual restraints, law, or private property. Such ideas had an impact on the works of contemporary scholars such as Sir Thomas More's Utopia in 1516, which described an ideal country devoid of poverty, crime, or other maladies. Thus, the voyages of Columbus marked a prominent shift in the trajectory of world history and had many dimensions that elicit our consideration.